Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Clicks Wellness Expert Panel webinar. I'm your host, Tarryn Trussell van Louw, and I'm super excited for tonight's gorgeous exploration. Are you ready for an enlightening exploration into a significant phase in every woman's life? Menopause, a natural and crucial life passage. Now, it is important to note that menopause isn't exclusive to women. Men too undergo a unique journey referred to as andropause. Now, understanding these transitions isn't just a matter of health, but a celebration of the evolving self. And I love that because we are in a time that just having conversation and opening up dialogue is so important. Now, as we delve into this topic, we aim to unravel the mysteries, share valuable insights, and of course, create a space where questions find their voice. We have a wealth of information and advice brought to you by our Clicks Wellness Expert Panel member, Dr. Mpumi Zenda, who will be joining us shortly. And in today's webinar, we want to empower you with knowledge, assure you that you are not alone in this journey, and of course, provide unwavering support throughout your unique menopausal and andropausal journey. This webinar is not only an opportunity for us to learn from our experts, but also a shared space for you, our viewer, to engage actively. And therefore, I want to urge you to connect with us. Let's engage in dialogue that promotes awareness, dispels myths, and of course, encourages a proactive approach to overall wealth. Feel free to ask questions, please. This is all about connectivity, about exchanging of knowledge, and as I said earlier, empowerment. Guys, ask your question using the hashtag Clicks Wellness Experts. I'm going to say it again, hashtag Clicks Wellness Experts, followed by your question, and our expert will answer your question towards the end of the live. Right. So without further ado, shall we welcome our magical doctor that's about to, there she is.
Hello.
Warmest welcome. Hello, Dr. Zenda.
I'm good. I'm so good. It's hot though. I'm in Joburg. It is so hot. So
listen, I'm not going to complain, but Cape Town is something else. So yeah, let's and how fitting talking about heat, and we're talking about menopause.
I'm flashing, I tell you.
Magical. Dr. Zenda, let's start the conversation with you. Could you provide a comprehensive explanation to what menopause is, how it's diagnosed, and the key psychological changes that occur during this natural transition in life?
Tarryn, I love the fact that you keep emphasizing the fact that it is a natural transition. So many women dread the idea of menopause. Those who are in their perimenopause, they're like hanging on for dear life, literally, not to get there. And I want to encourage, and I hope our conversation today will encourage that sense of, actually, this is a beautiful stage to transition into. The more we understand, the better. So to your question, what is menopause? We say somebody has menopause when they have missed at least 12 consecutive missed periods. I feel like I'm echoing. Is that all right on your side?
Sound is perfect on my side.
Okay, perfect. So when somebody has missed 12 consecutive periods, and we expected around, on average, between the ages of 45 to about 52, averaging at about 48, but it is very much related to a family.
Dr. Zenda?
There we go. Yeah. Right. So it is always quite related to, so for example,
I'm not sure if it's on my side, but it seems to be a little bit of a glitch happening on Dr. Zenda's side.
Right. Can you guys hear me?
There you are. And you're back.
Tarryn,
I can hear you.
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me? I don't know. It keeps, the video keeps jumping out. But anyway, without wasting any more time. So it's important to understand that you only say you have menopause after that 12-month period. But even prior to that, I think it's important to understand that there is a pre-menopause phase, or what we call a perimenopausal phase, which basically is the years preceding menopause. And this can start as early as in early 40s, 41, 42 years of age. And some women may even start experiencing certain symptoms. So in terms of diagnosis, the best way we know how is based on the history, which is the missed periods, but there are blood tests that we can basically double check or check for sure that you have menopause. We'll look for a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone. It basically is the one that stimulates the eggs to ripen in getting ready for ovulation. But with menopause, obviously this hormone is like raging, because the ovaries are like, I'm done. What are you trying to do? So your FSH is usually like very high. That's what we look out for. Over and above that, it is the client's symptoms that generally prompt them even to come through and see us. So, and we probably will get onto the specific symptoms. I don't know if you wanted to go into that right away, Tarryn.
Well, I was kind of going to, delve into that side of things, because, as you say, that perimenopausal period, is that transitioning period. And I want you to please elaborate and maybe offer some advice on how women can better prepare themselves for the physical and emotional changes that are happening. Because in my very little bit of knowledge of this, I see menopause almost as if it's the same like going through puberty, but at a later stage in your life, because you're going through the same massive transition. The difference is that when you're a teen, it's kind of like expected around 11, 12, 13. And here we have this massive gap of 45 to 50, maybe even 55. So as we say, that perimenopausal period, it could be anything. What can women do to somewhat prepare themselves, as I said, mentally, emotionally, also physically, for this massive transition that's happening?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Tarryn, because I think what we do in our 20s and our 30s, it really does impact how we then experience our 40s, our 50s. So if we are already in perimenopause, it's not too late. And there's still quite a lot that we can do. But I would really encourage, especially if we've got younger ladies listening, making sure that just a healthy lifestyle is a game changer. Making sure that you're constantly sticking to the right kind of foods, diet, so to speak. Understanding your body as well is really a crucial part of it. Understanding when your cycle comes, being able to notice when there are changes, because generally the changes are quite subtle. Eating, exercising, and then obviously the usual, or maybe not going to say usual, because some people don't even get to do those, but your yearly screenings are important, because menopause is associated with a lot of other what we call lifestyle disease, from cardiac disease to diabetes, hypertension, and the lots. And we know that by 35 years, from 35 years of age, we start getting that decline in our hormones, particularly the the estrogen, the progesterone, as well as also the testosterone. So even things like your metabolism will slow down significantly. But if you're somebody who has just kept themselves at a normal BMI, I always also encourage, when it comes to exercising, incorporate quite a bit of strength training, because this builds your muscle. This also impacts your bones, which means by the time you get to menopause, you're not already depleted in terms of your bone density. Also, when you've got just a bit more muscle mass than fat in terms of the comparison, you stand a better chance in terms of not gaining as much weight. That's one of the big things that we complain about, the gain in weight, because the metabolism is slowed down. And then you start getting the actual cardinal symptoms of menopause, which then will include things like hot flashes, insomnia, which is difficulty in sleeping, or rather waking up at night or not being able to sleep. And then you get people who just get sort of like a disturbed or a changed pattern of sleep. Mentally, you become prone to things like Alzheimer's and dementia. But also, a lot of women may not necessarily have those overt symptoms like Alzheimer's per se, but they may experience some kind of like slowing down and what they call a brain fog. So like a fogginess, forgetfulness, those
Yeah.
kind of things. Then you start getting the big ones. Maybe because I'm a gynae, they are really big. What we call the genital syndrome symptoms, so to speak. Genital symptoms include both urinary as well as the genitals, which include the vagina or the vulva. People are more exposed or more prone to urinary tract infection, yeast infections. So you see even the percentage of women who experience just recurrent infections is much higher at this stage. Then you get the sexual pleasure issues from the low libido to difficulty or decreased lubrication, which then leads to pain during sexual intimacy. So these are all probably, people come with a variety. Not everybody will have all the symptoms, but these are the ones that we see quite often.
Wow, there's so much information that just came through now that I'm almost like, yes, I've heard of that. Yes, I've heard of that. And it's amazing that we are having such a kind conversation about this, because many times menopause is almost labeled as a sentence. There's so much stigma attached to it. And that's why I want
golden years. I mean, I think we don't look at the benefits enough of what happens when women get into menopause, but, a story for another day.
Oh, we're definitely getting into it tonight. I want to just continue with what you were saying, as I said, it's almost a sentence. What are some of the common misconceptions about menopause that that one often like encounters in your practice?
Yeah. I mean, the big one is we associate aging with a loss of beauty, a loss of womanhood, particularly menopause, because it is a sort of like a finale in terms of your reproductive. If you are somebody who wanted a family or who had so we associate procreation or having children with womanhood, and so there's also this myth or this sort of like shame around getting older, like, oh, I'm not a woman anymore, am I not a good enough woman anymore if I can't bear children anymore? Those are big ones. And then obviously the physical changes from just the amount of weight that we generally will gain around this time, to sort of like people who were really high functioning, you start finding that you're like, nah, I'd like to slow down a little bit. Or if you're still in that kind of mode of wanting to be, highly active somebody, which is perfectly okay, and I definitely encourage that. People then often find they are feeling their energy is lower. They're not. They're not as energetic as they were in their 30s, in their 20s, for example. These are all the sort of like the stereotypes that make people feel shameful around menopause. Another big one is there is an assumption that, oh, well, when you've menopause, then you don't desire to be sexually intimate, or you're not desirable. Even if it's something that we project out of our own selves, we think we're not desirable enough. So you find that we decline quite a bit in terms of sexual intimacy as well, and this should not be so. I think every single woman, I mean, first of all, on those benefits, you don't very often, by this time, your kids are grown, they're out of the house. That means you've got the house to yourself. This is also always a great time, because very often women have kind of figured themselves out what they want out of life. Sometimes we may have delayed certain passions for childbearing and child rearing ages and stuff. You're busy with schools and so forth. Kids are gone. Take that time to look after yourself. Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to those hobbies, those things that used to just make your heart sing. And you find people become extremely great and find these very enjoyable and fulfilling. This is also good for your own mental well-being. We are more prone at this stage as well to have more mental health illnesses, depression, anxiety in particular. So by keeping busy, by getting involved in things that really mean something to you, you'll find that you'll actually enjoy those years a whole lot more.
Yeah, so it is very much a matter of the mental, the physical, the spiritual. It's a whole holistic approach to this massive transition that's happening in your life. and not to have almost the external factors disrupt this gorgeous evolution that's happening.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on something, and I'm hoping that you're able to help me in this as well. We spoke a little bit earlier, or I alluded to it earlier, that, women are not the only ones that go through menopause. There is a male version as well. And men also go through the shift. And if you think that we don't speak enough about menopause, heaven forbid, we speak about what men go through. Andropause. I hope that you can assist and shed some light. What exactly do men go through when they go through this life transition or this evolution?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely men also go through a hormonal transition. It's not quite the same as in
Mm.
women. And the big difference is that with women, we are born with all our eggs, which means, like I said, from 35 years of age, both the quality and the quantity of our eggs starts to decline. And we do get to that finality or finality in terms of our ability to reproduce or to have children. Men, on the other hand, yes, from literally as early as the age of 30, they start dropping their testosterone, and
Oh,
more so, yeah, and more so between their 40s and 50s. Now, like I said earlier on, lifestyle makes a big difference, but just on the
mm,
general, just take a typical male, they will find in terms of symptoms as a result of this decline in testosterone. They may find sort of like this decreased energy, low libido, may even experience erectile dysfunction, um, mental health issues as well, anxiety, depression, just a lack of drive to do anything and to get up. In terms of physical, again, low energy, weight gain, particularly in the abdomen and breast
yes,
region. Some people call gynecomastia. This becomes really important because also we find that men generally don't go as promptly as women would to go and seek out for help.
yeah,
This is very easily treatable. We basically, again, in terms of diagnosis, we do blood tests, we check where your testosterone. This is what we would then call a late onset
mm,
hypogonadism. And there is plenty of research work. We've been using testosterone as a hormone replacement for men for some time now. So there is no need for men to kind of go through this and feel like it's the end. The maybe not tricky. The again, back to that difference between men and women. Men, they make or they produce sperm every 60 days. So if you think about it, all the way into their 60s, 70s, even,
yeah.
particularly if they have taken good care of their bodies, men could be having babies for a long time. So I'm like, let them have babies. We are fine. We are in our
So at which point does in generally on average do men go through this andropause shift? Because we know that women possibly from say on average 45
yeah,
onwards. When do
yeah.
men go through this so that we also know what what is this we're going through?
You know what's been crazy, man, Tarryn, is that whilst we expect this to be happening, of course we know that there is a gradual decline throughout from like the 30s, as I've mentioned. But one thing
Mm,
that we are seeing more often, and this is a whole lot to do with lifestyle, lack of exercise, and that
yeah,
kind of thing, where we're seeing men, younger men, actually experiencing this. So we would have expected this to happen in their 50s, mid
yeah,
50s into their 60s. But you're starting to see men literally in their 40s struggling with things like erectile dysfunction, particularly that typical, or maybe not, let me not say typical, but that guy who doesn't train, has got a bit of a belly, drinks, maybe even smokes. So there's a lot of lifestyle things that make such a big difference. So I mean, if there was ever an incentive for men to be able to perform all the way into their 60s, 70s, get your
yeah.
lifestyle right, and you will see and reap the fruits and the benefits of it.
I think that for the very first time tonight, we're actually talking about something like I spoke about now, andropause. I did not know it exists. It was always just this curse of the woman's change that happens on her. But actually,
Yeah.
we kind of in this together. So having a healthy dialogue about this and almost
Oh yeah.
like co supporting each other in this is so valuable.
Yeah.
And yeah, very fascinating. Now, I quickly just want to urge our viewers once again to engage with us. We have our expert right here, and she's down and willing. Dr. Zenda coming with a wealth of knowledge. Please send through those questions. Hashtag clicks clicks wellness experts. There we go. Hashtag clicks wellness experts. Shoot through those questions, and of course Dr. Zenda will come through with those answers. So I want to move on a little bit more and talk about lifestyle. And we
Yes.
spoke about it a little bit earlier, but I want to go a little bit more into the dietary side of things.
Yeah.
I myself, I'm 38 years old, and I make sure that I put a lot back in that I know I am losing along the way, be it collagen, be it just trying to eat as much raw foods as possible, drinking
Yeah.
water that's a certain pH. And I'm not trying to seem all kumbaya about what I consume, but I think, just being extremely conscious and aware and woke, as they say, about what we can, do to assist. Because, as you said earlier, age, that gap is becoming earlier and earlier. I know some women start showing symptoms at 39 already,
Yeah.
of having, being premenopausal. So, what are the things that we can do on a very almost layman level when it comes to how we're shopping, what we're eating, what we're doing in terms of our supplements and all the rest? What to
Yeah.
avoid?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe let's start with what to avoid. One of the biggest culprits that I find, and it doesn't necessarily contribute towards menopause in itself, but in
Yeah.
terms of lifestyle, we always sugarcoat our drinks. Our pink drinks, and yet one of the big things about when we age is that our bodies actually don't process carbohydrates as easily, or as we tend to store a lot. And so one of the big things I want to just flag out for us ladies, and it doesn't matter what age you're in, be careful of what's in your liquor in particular. Very often there's a lot of calories in there that we don't even account for. And a lot of women, you'll find they're not even eating proper meals in between those drinks. So be very mindful. And if need be, get a dietitian to look at your current diet. I often, and as part of our wellness program and things, we want to always encourage they say you can't out gym or out work out a bad diet, so to speak.
Yeah.
So when it comes to diet, you mentioned some really important things: drinking plenty of water, making sure that you're eating a lot of greens. You should be eating from all your food groups, but we tend to down a little bit on the dairy, we down a little bit on the carbs. Make sure you're still getting your protein. Sometimes supplements are great, but very often you'll find that a lot of women in particular, when you are eating well, you get quite a fair supplement of what you need. Things that I would say top on, because of the bone density, would be the calcium. That becomes quite important to supplement that. What else? These are things we can do at home. Exercise. Again, a lot of us love doing a lot of cardio. We kind of do a lot of running, a lot of aerobics and stuff. That's great. It's beautiful for your heart, for your vessels, but it doesn't do a whole lot, particularly for increasing your metabolism, for building. In fact, generally cardio will burn and will eat away on your muscle.
Yeah.
And then another good habit when it comes to eating in particular is, we often think if we skip meals, if we're fasting. I know there's a lot of work that's been done on fasting. I'm not sure yet, simply because we are very cyclical beings as well, which means even though our hormones have declined, we still have enough hormones in us. But over and above that, our body needs us to help it along the way. So anything between 2 to 3 hours, smaller portions. Make sure that you're distributing all your food groups quite in a balanced manner. Again, dietitians are really great at this. And the reason we don't generally give out generic information is because it has to be based on, there's something which we call an in-body scan, where we're not just looking at your BMI based on your weight, because that can also be misleading. We are all different structures, body, bone densities. So an in-body scan is really great because it then defines how much fat there is, how much, all the different compositions, and then we can work from there in terms of what works for you. The earlier, the better. So if you start this in your 20s, okay, maybe enjoy your 20s. In your 30s, into your 40s, you'll find that it's a much smoother transition. And I mean, gym gets harder. Everything seems harder, but it's still, your body is still working with you. So give it what it needs, and I promise you it will reciprocate.
Now, we spoke about the actual physical things. I want to now delve into, what are the strategies we can use for managing those other common symptoms, the hot flushes, the mood swings, the disturbed sleep. I mean, those are very difficult things. And I imagine that someone that goes through this, it's lonely. You're by yourself, you're battling by yourself. How does one manage this, and what strategies does one take to actually journey through it?
Yeah, especially if you are experiencing, because one of the big issues with menopausal symptoms, see, when you're at home by yourself, very often you can kind of deal with yourself. It is when it starts to disturb your quality of life, whether it be in work or just being out in the public. You get women fearing that they're going to get those hot flashes where they get drenching wet. So some of the things that are really, especially with the hot flashes, that are great to do, try and avoid things like that stimulate that heat. So caffeine, alcohol, smoking, all of those things will do that. But also wear layered clothes. Always carry around a good frozen bottle of water if possible. If you have at the office, make sure it's there. Aircons and fans are really great. Make sure you've got those in your workspace in particular. Drinking lots of water helps, like I've mentioned, but also things like that we've spoken about, managing your diet, managing your weight, just by decreasing a 5 to 10% perhaps of your body weight, particularly if your body weight is already a higher BMI than normal, you'll find that it actually does alleviate some of those symptoms. Avoiding taking things like, I mean, it's not to say you're never going to have coffee or caffeinated drinks, but try and also avoid taking them closer to the time of bed in the evenings, because then that will also stimulate things like insomnia. The drinking water works for pretty much a lot of things, including just making sure that you're not getting as many UTIs. And then when you do feel some kind of irritability, make sure that you do see your gynae or your doctor. Using lube, be it for a day-to-day, lube is not only for sexual intimacy. Water-based lubes are great to use on just day if you need to. Avoid at all costs using panty liners all the time. Only if necessary, use a panty liner. And when you can get that girl to breathe, don't wear underwear and just let her breathe. These are all the things that will decrease the chances of infections. Just also make you feel more comfortable. Always carry, and we always carry extra pair of shoes in our cars. Always carry an extra blouse or just dress, an outfit, something easy, light, just in case you get into trouble and you get that drenching hot flash unexpected, so that you can get something to change.
I have so many questions from everything that you're saying. So I just want to urge our viewers, please pop your questions through. The doc is here. #clicks wellness experts. Your questions will be answered a little bit later, coming to the end of the live. So please shoot them through. Doc, I want to ask you, on average, I know it differs from person to person. How long is the menopause transition? Let's hypothetically say it starts appearing or surfacing at, say, 45. When does it pass?
Right. So this is quite interesting, because the preceding to menopause, so the perimenopausal phase, can last anything between 5 to even 8 years. So like I said, we could start as early as like 41, 42. But generally around the perimenopause, the big symptoms that we see are not necessarily the hot flashes as much. You might get that mood change, you might get, but the big one
Yeah.
is the period change, where you start seeing your period either getting lighter, and then sometimes what you start seeing is these periods of missed periods, like 2 to 3 months, you don't get your period, and then it comes, and then it goes
Yeah.
away, and then it comes back again. And you find that the older you get, those periods of missed periods or missed menses, they become even longer the closer you get
Yeah.
to menopause. Then
Yeah.
the symptoms we spoke about, hot flushes, insomnia, brain fog, genitourinary symptoms, and the likes, those are usually quite big within that, the first 2 years after you've, so during that, it could be during that menopause into the 2 years. Very often
Mm.
the hot flashes may actually subside, especially if somebody takes treatment. Some people don't even ever take treatment, and they subside within about 2 to 5 years. But the ones
Mm.
that don't necessarily get better are the genitourinary symptoms. So the UTIs, the yeast infections, the sexual dysfunctions or sexual challenges that people experience. Those generally you find that they don't necessarily get better, especially if somebody hasn't taken some kind of treatment, particularly if they are still sexually active.
Or chose to maybe do a change of lifestyle. As you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a medicine. It could
Yeah,
just
no,
be
no, no.
small
It's not.
changes.
Medicine is not for everyone, and there's so
Mm.
much that people can do with just home. Even I'm also always quite how do I say, supportive, especially of the evidence-based, what we call it integrational medicine. So the
Yeah.
homeopathic and so forth. You really do get some very well researched medicines or home remedies that people can actually use. So
Mm.
yeah.
I love that. And we're speaking about the alternative ways in which one can make this whole journey so much more pleasant. There's also the support and the love and the comfort from your partner, that also makes this whole experience a lot easier. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how, a woman can be support to a man during his andropause period, and in the same way, how your partner can be a massive asset to making it a pleasant experience for you during your menopausal era.
Yeah. That is so important. Particularly, a lot of women, they not only find it difficult to talk about what they're going
Mm,
through with their families, but also with our friends. So a lot of women feel isolated, and I want to just
mm,
put this challenge to all of us as families, and this actually goes whether we are talking about men in andropause, we're talking about the women in menopause, we're talking about the women in their reproductive age, we're talking about the teen in your house that's going through puberty. These conversations are so important. When people understand what you are going through, they can be more supportive, and supportive in a meaningful way. Also, the more you are at ease with talking about it, you can't talk about what you don't know or don't understand yourself. So I would say, even track back, the responsibility on probably a lot of us, all of us, even, is to these kind of webinars, get educated a little bit,
normalize. Yeah.
understand, get to understand your body, normalize these conversations amongst just, whether it's
Yeah.
moms at school, whether it's wherever you're meeting your girlfriends, and so forth, so that it's not a taboo or something negative to talk about. When it comes to
Mm,
your partner, remember that your partner, especially if you are in a heterosexual relationship, or even if you're not, and you've got a huge age gaps, but even people who may be of the same, around the same age, same sex in a relationship, you might find your experiences are completely different, that it's still necessary to just break it down for the next person. What am I going through? What are the
yeah.
symptoms? What are the ways that you can assist me with? Very often sexual challenges kind of come up, especially where partners are concerned, because a partner may start to feel like, am I not desirable anymore? Why don't you want to get
Yes.
into it anymore? Or why does it look like, or why does it seem like now you have more pain than before? These are
Mm.
all things
It
that
becomes a
men may need.
personal thing.
Exactly. So it's important to and I even say to women, if you're a bit shy talking about it with your partner, come along to something like this together with your partner.
Yeah.
Get the webinars, get the talks, so that somebody who is a professional, who is an outsider, is explaining to the both of you, and it just takes the pressure off you as well to try and explain yourself. We do get very conscious when we need to do that. So and likewise, understanding your partner as well. So it's not enough for us. And I'm glad we kind of incorporated menopause, because then you also understand that, oh, they are also going through something.
Yes.
How can I be of help? How can I be of assistance? The first and probably the best question I always say is, ask your partner, how can I help?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually quite a beautiful elevation in your marriage or your partnership, or your relationship, because you are there through transition, and that is always a make or break in a
Yeah.
relationship. So that's pretty magical stuff. We're talking about this, and so I want to almost elaborate a little bit on the whole libido side of things. It's good to be there emotionally and mentally for your partner, but we know that intimacy is a critical part of a relationship. So, besides the lubrication part of things, because we know women tend to become a little less, lubricant on that side of things. What other advice would you give to women? Because the libido also slows down. So,
Yeah.
but you still want to feel loved and beautiful and desired. So what would you advise on that type of challenge?
Yeah. The good thing is, in this day and age, medicine has advanced. We
Mm,
now have specific medication, hormone replacement. So when we're talking hormone replacement, particularly when it comes to libido, it may not necessarily need to be in the dosages that you take for the other symptoms. It may not be for the duration even. I know, particularly from the sexology part of things, we do things like compounded hormonal treatments. In fact, when you look at research, it has been approved that women may get a very small amount of testosterone hormone
mm,
replacement therapy, because, particularly for that libido, because it's not only the estrogen that drops, but also it is the testosterone. Now, looking at the different parts of the, let's call it the sexual cycle, libido, or yes, let's talk libido and desire. That one, when we give a little bit of testosterone, tends to improve quite a bit. When we're talking about lube in particular, you still need an element of estrogen. So sometimes you might find a woman who's uncomfortable with taking hormone replacement therapy, but they might be okay with taking, say, for example, an estrogen infused cream for a short period of time, because there's a thinning and sort of like a collapse of the collagen and the structure in terms of the skin around the vagina and the vaginal area.
mm.
Thinning, there's also increased chance or let me say, propensity to having inflammation, which then can be very uncomfortable. So all those things, if there's pain, pleasure disappears. Pleasure's like, bye, goodbye, I'm gone. So
Me or
wherever,
you?
it's like we can't coexist. So wow, there's kink. So
This is true.
another topic. But what becomes important is alleviating those uncomfortable symptoms for a woman, so that they can also
Mhm.
feel. So it's hormone replacement. There are other medications that are not necessarily hormonal. In fact, they are what we call sort of like an off-label use. They are meant for other things, but because we've seen on their effect, we can use them for other things. So speaking to your doctor so that they can always cater the medication they give you to the symptoms that you are having. Not all medication is for all symptoms.
Yeah.
And I think this becomes really important. One, from the woman's side, advocating for, no, I want this, not that. But also, secondly, just making sure that from a clinician's perspective, you're not just like doing this blanket generic treatment. There's something we call precise or precision medicine,
Yes.
which
Yes.
based on this woman sitting in front of me, what are her concerns, and by the way, a lot of the times, one of the first rule in sexology is, if he or she is not bothered by it, it's not a
Yes.
problem. So
If it ain't
sometimes people,
broke, there's nothing to fix.
exactly, if somebody is not complaining or
Yes.
after asking, they like, I'm not bothered by me not having more sex than I used to. It's okay. That is
Yeah.
also quite okay. And it's
Yeah.
important for people to feel comfortable in the choices that they're making, even going through these transitions.
I love that you said that, because it's important to also reiterate that we are also unbelievably but believably unique, and we go
Yeah.
through our journey differently. And some might find, like, in a very freakish way, that I actually have more drive in my 40s. More power to you. But it's so important that we're not all like the same in the process, and oh, this must be reached at this step, because, as you say, everybody's body responds differently. We're all living different type of lifestyles. But you spoke about something very important earlier, about hormones. And I think that there's a lot of information about hormones, and the opinions around it, and hormone replacement therapies and all these things, that I know that many women, I mean, I've got family that quickly have to go for hysterectomies, and there's a little bit of facial hair that appears. And I almost feel like these are always the extreme cases, when it comes to the change of life, as the older ladies, the more mature ladies would say. But I want to almost elaborate a little bit more on that, and have you provide us with clarity and also benefits and the risks associated with HRT, for example, and how does one decide on the right option when you are going through this process?
Yeah. Look, HRT, or hormone replacement therapy, is not for everyone.
Yeah,
And I almost want to kind of elaborate on the part that whether you are the woman who chooses HRT or does not, it's equally valid, right? Because we are the custodians of our own health. And also, what we are going through in terms of symptoms, like we've been saying, may not be anything like how my counterpart, or my next door neighbor is going through. So
hmm,
always advocate for your own symptoms. Your lifestyle.
yeah,
Hormone replacement therapy, the cornerstone of it is estrogen replacement in particular. Estrogen replacement, because that's what we are lacking. The symptoms are occurring because that's what has declined significantly.
okay,
And there are women who really need this and benefit greatly from it. Something that becomes really important, maybe one or two things. The first thing is that if you are somebody that is going to be taking hormone replacement therapy, it is important that your doctor, specifically your gynecologist, does
mm,
an thorough assessment of your chronic or underlying medical history. Family history is really important. We tend to be quite cautious with clients who have first degree members that have suffered breast cancer, or if yourself you've had suspicions whether it's lumps. It's always good to get that, just make sure that you don't have a lineage that has breast cancer in
very
particular.
important. It's very important that you say this, because you go to the doctor without a cooking clue on what to ask, or and so this is so important that you're going also equipped.
Yeah. The other one that sometimes we for I wouldn't say forget, maybe it's not as obvious, is that
Mm,
HRT can either be just estrogen alone or
mm,
estrogen with a progestin. The reason we have the progestin is because whilst estrogen is great for other things, it may actually predispose the woman who still has a uterus. You spoke about hysterectomies. Yes,
yeah,
for gynecological reason, a woman at the stage may have had their wombs removed. That's fine. But for that woman
yeah,
who still has their womb, we still need to protect that, the lining, from endometrial cancer by making
yeah,
sure that what we call add back, we give back that progestin, that has also significantly declined. And also, if we're going to give that estrogen, it does counter, the progestin counters the risk of endometrial cancer in that woman
mm,
who still has. And like I said, there are other medications. Let's say we've assessed somebody, and based on maybe their medical history, and we think it's not a good idea for them to be on HRT. There are other medication that is non-hormonal per se. For the purpose of our webinar, we can't say specific names, but when you speak to your gynae, you will find that there are other medications that can be used over and above. There are what we call in terms of holistic therapies or alternative therapies, not because they are, they like substitute one for something else. No, but I think it's just should be part of the package. Are things like meditation, things like cognitive behavioral therapy, especially if somebody is experiencing a lot of mood changes and
100%.
particularly when it's affecting them in terms of just their functionality. It is, we also have this idea that we only go to therapists when things are really falling apart, when it's like we tried everything. And even younger age, I always encourage, have your therapist, just like you have your gynae, do a 3-monthly check-in, even if everything is going well. It makes it so much easier for us to go when things don't feel okay, when we don't feel okay. And like I said, a lot of women may experience a lot of mood changes and mood symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we are constant work in progress. We're never at our, at our most perfect state. So thank you so much. I want to get into some of the questions. Thank you so much to you at home for coming through with those amazing questions. Doc, are you ready? Because we're about to get into them. I think that you might have maybe already touched on some of these questions, but maybe want to be a little bit more specific and streamline with these specific questions. So my first one goes, how do I distinguish normal aging health symptoms that are changes and menopausal symptoms? Because I can tell you, I'm 38 and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is up with my back? What is this? And am I premenopausal? But there's changes happening. How does one distinguish between the two?
I think firstly, based on just that notion of paying attention to your body, because you do feel these changes. But the menopausal symptoms, particularly when you're actually going through the menopause and, soon after, or the post-menopause, the symptoms are quite disturbing for a lot of women, in the sense that, when we're talking about hot flashes, I'm not talking about what you and I are going through now from the heat, just a little. You literally get a drenching, embarrassingly drenching, sweat. The difficulty with sleep, insomnia is, and very often this is a significant change from what you are used to. So the insomnia, for example, all of a sudden, you used to get a good night's sleep without any assistance, without any medication. Suddenly you're finding yourself, and how it often ripple effect is that if you're struggling to sleep, you find you're cranky in the morning, you're struggling you're chasing the day, and it then spills over into your performance at work, and so on. So that also make you stand back and be like, this is not, it's like I'm working with a new machine. What's going on? The genitourinary symptoms also are quite overt, particularly for, the ladies who are, floridly sexually active and who enjoy their pleasure. They will definitely notice that drop in their libido, and just the pain you cannot even escape. The dryness, you'll find that even just getting into that space of being intimate becomes harder. With that. So I promise you will know when these symptoms happen. The reality is there are women who go through these and kind of, maybe not necessarily as, it's a little bit like when you think of period pains. When we get into puberty, some women will have period pains, and some women have never known what a period pain feels like their entire life. So it's just being mindful of, and just noting the changes that are happening in your particular. And if they don't happen, you're one of the lucky ones.
It's a matter of know thyself and constantly be in touch with yourself. 100%.
Absolutely.
Another question coming through. I've heard that some women experience early menopause. What factors contribute to the onset of early menopause, and how might the experience differ from menopause at the typical age? So
Yeah.
basically, like, does early menopause have more drastic effects or impacts versus having it at the so-called expected 45 plus age?
Yeah. In fact, anybody who experiences menopausal symptoms less than 40 years of age, in fact, yeah, less than 40 years of age, we call that, it's basically ovarian failure. It's ovarian failure syndrome. And I'll go a little bit into it, what are some of the instances where that happens. But even from the age of, let's say, 40 and 45, that is still considered early menopause. Where we often don't necessarily worry is if it runs in the family. So, for example, if the mom went into menopause at like 43, 44 years, the daughter goes into menopause at 43, 44, you're like, oh, okay. We would have had to exclude any other underlying causes. When the menopause happens naturally, even if it's slightly earlier, the symptoms are still relatively the same. Where things kind of make a big difference is when we have ovarian failure. This is menopause before the age of 40 years. This often happens, particularly with women, women who have either had to take cancer medication, things like chemotherapy, radiation therapy that may have killed the functioning of the ovaries, and like literally it went on that sort of like immediate menopause. Those symptoms can be, or gynecological conditions where there's maybe a cyst or masses that end up destroying the ovaries. That can be a big factor as well that contributes. So whenever somebody has had, or a hysterectomy that needed to have what we call bilateral oophorectomy, or removal of the ovaries, at any point where the ovaries were removed. And we see this sometimes even in women who are in their 20s and their 30s with some gynecological conditions, and they end up losing either one or both ovaries. Now, when it happens, this all of us, like almost like as a sudden thing, but also at such an early age, yes, the symptoms are more profound. In fact, these are the women we urge and encourage to take HRT from the get-go, particularly if it's not contraindicated for anything. It does get a bit tricky. You've got somebody who's got, for example, breast cancer, and you're like, oh, we can't give this. And actually some of the medication they take, it actually sends them even more into that menopausal with more symptoms. So it can be really a difficult sort of like playing with what you have to try and get the best quality for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes lots of sense. And it's so good to know this. And as we say, the more conversation we have about this, the more this knowledge can be shared. So we can just empower ourselves. The next question goes, what role does regular consultation with your OBS, your gynae, play in managing menopause? And how can women determine the most suitable treatment options for their specific needs?
Yeah. Oh, getting yourself a great gynae, and a great gynae, I often say there's a standard sort of like pass with all of us, but connecting with your gynae, finding somebody
100%.
that resonates with you, somebody that you're unafraid to ask questions, you're unafraid to give a call at any time, particularly when you're in crisis. That goes a mighty long way. And a lot of women generally, unless something has happened, generally don't like changing their gynae. So where possible, find your gynae early, grow with them, so that as you transition into menopause, it almost kind of feels like walking into your best friend's or your friend's consultation, and like, friend, this is what's going down, this is what's happening with me, and being comfortable will save you from, first of all, a lot of, we often get scared that we are not, our best interest is not being looked after, or did that person really give me what is best for me? You find that you're advocating for yourself, but also your gynae, especially if it's somebody that resonates with you. They will ask important things. Make sure that you're getting your regular checks, things like from the age of 40. Even we want you to get your mammogram done every year. We want you to see your gynae every year, even though you don't have to do things like a pap smear every year, particularly if it was normal the previous year. We want to make sure that we are keeping tabs on your other chronic conditions, if there are any, or looking out and screening you for things like diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, high cholesterol, and metabolic syndrome. Those become some of the important things. Your bones, how you're doing brain-wise. And somebody that you've known, they are also able to pick up and be like, no, the last time I saw you, your memory was a lot more sharper. What's happened?
Yeah,
How are we doing? Okay, actually, this is what we have. This is what I would recommend. So it never should feel like this sort of like drive-through of, oh, I'm going to go in, take off my clothes, get a medication, and leave. It should be a
exactly.
relationship. You find
100%.
you find that the better your relation is with your doctor, the more you get out of those consultations.
I agree 100% with you. I'm one of, I'm sure many women, but I have such a beautiful relationship with my gynae that when I visit her annually, she remembers things about my life from a year ago, and that for me is the indicator. And she'll ask me, "So how's the podcast going?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Girl, I know your memory's not that great, but it's that invested effort, that energy, that interest that makes me feel safe. And when I feel safe, I think just physically, I feel safe with this person. So I
And you also,
absolutely agree with you.
you become also comfortable to talk about the more
Yes.
embarrassing symptoms, organ
Yeah.
prolapse, urinary
Yeah.
continence. Women never, they will like, you have to dig and be like, how are things going?
Yeah.
How are things really going? But like I
Absolutely.
said, with the great gynae that you resonate with, it makes
Yeah.
a world of difference.
Blessing. Final question, doctor. Is it normal to get my periods twice a month? And when should I be concerned and consult my health practitioner? So I'm not too sure the age of this person, but because we are talking menopause, I'm assuming that she's possibly approaching or in that bracket.
Yeah. So during perimenopause, your period, if you are that girl who used to have the perfect cycle, it will throw you off quite a bit. And sometimes for
Oh, okay.
2, 3 months, 3 months, missing your period. Just also, especially less than 45, be mindful when these things happen, and you, especially if you are sexually active, still take the necessary precautions if you don't want to fall pregnant, because
Oh, wow.
although it's the chances are much less, there are people who still fall pregnant in their 40s. So just bear that in mind, even as you transition into this, especially if you're still seeing your period every now and again. The only time you can really properly relax is if you've seen a full year of consecutive periods completely missed. Now, something that also becomes important, if you have menopause and you've missed those 12 periods, if you do bleed after that, so let's say you go for like 2 years without ever bleeding, and then suddenly you bleed, that is something that is a red flag. You need to go
Okay.
and get that checked out. So bleeding after you have menopause is a big red flag.
Mm.
Irregular periods during your perimenopause, perfectly normal. Just make sure you're not pregnant.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank
The
you so
things
much,
we
doctor.
see,
What did you say there?
I'm saying it's the things we see and go through with our peoples. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, girl plug, just make sure
Yeah.
that
And I
you're
love that you
still.
speak almost casually about it and almost candidly about it, because I think mentally we add a lot of fuss on something that is not that deep. It's not that serious.
No,
Yeah.
especially with the great gynae. It's
Yeah.
information, and I mean, like these websites for me are a dream, really, to be
Absolutely.
able for us to educate our people, our women, and just empower them. It's everything.
Fantastic. Love that for us. Love that for South Africa, for South African women, and for our community right here. Thank you so much for connecting with us and asking these questions. We are busy with a movement here. We want to have these conversations. We want to normalize these questions so that we can be safe, healthy, and informed in our beautiful country. Now, I want to go on and say, Doc, you are just besides this wealth of knowledge, you come with an energy that just makes it so safe, so comfortable, so warm. And for that, one is just, abundantly grateful, because it's important to have these conversations. You share some insightful knowledge, and our viewers are just, reveling in it because sometimes we've heard it, or we think, or maybe, or a friend, oh, I heard it from so and so, or it's some broadcast message on WhatsApp. But here you are to confirm and give us peace that this is what it is. I want to almost close off by asking you for any final advice, any final thoughts.
I think, people would often expect me to give like some very educated medical school. One of the things that literally made me become a gynae was realizing just how much in the women's space it feels like we are not heard, we are not seen. And I want to say, you are valid. What you're going through is valid. Please make sure that you speak to somebody, a professional that can assist. And if you are not happy, you're not married to your gynae, move. Find somebody that you can really connect with. Your health is so important. And when, like Tarryn has been saying, when you feel safe, you are likely to get more out of those consultations and that relationship.
100%, and you feel healthier. Like, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait for us to be back again to delve into another exciting topic. You
I
come
enjoy
with,
so much. Just by the way,
yes,
like this, you are absolutely amazing, Tarryn.
I know.
Thank
Listen,
you.
I leave here a very wealthy woman after chatting with you. Thank you. Go well, and till we see each other real soon again, hopefully.
Soon. See you soon.
Now, the journey to overall health and well being is ongoing. Clicks is with you every step of the way. And we hope that the knowledge you've gained today empowers you and makes you feel informed about your choices and your health. Remember, menopause and andropause are not just biological processes, they are shared human experiences deserving of open conversation and support. Follow Clicks and, of course, hashtag Clicks Wellness Experts on our socials for more advice on our latest offerings. On behalf of Clicks, thank you so much for joining us today. Stay healthy, stay safe. My name is Tarryn K. Trussell van Louw, and it has been an absolute pleasure spending this hour with you. Until next time, good evening.